Hi, I'm Guy Parmenter. Today is August the 9th. It's Saturday, and I'm here to interview Leon J. Scott Jr., my uncle. Leon, it's good to be here at your home,
Well, it's glad to have you here.
and good to see you as always.
Well, thank you, sir.
Going to ask you a few questions about your life. First one, I'm going to ask where were you born and when were you born?
I was born on November the 7th, 1932, and I was born in Cartersville at home. And at home was the I think at that time was the Munford House, which sits up on the hill, the big house up on the hill. There as I think we were renting the upstairs of that house.
Uh-huh.
And I was delivered by Dr. Sam Howell at home, and he lived right across the street. So,
That's what I understand. Today, I think that house is at the corner of Charles Street and Howard Heights.
Right.
And the Hendersons. Barry Henderson owns that house today. They've done a
Okay.
lot of remodeling on it.
right.
But
A lot of people, I think, have lived in it since I was born. But
Right. If you hadn't seen it, it's a beautiful house today. They've done
Right.
really wonders with the yard and so forth. What? Who are your parents?
Well, my dad was Leon James Scott, whom I was named after, and my son was named after. And my mother was Vivian Rudisill Scott, and she was born and raised in Cornelia, Georgia. And my dad was born and raised in Toccoa, Georgia. So they were kind of more northeast Georgians than northwest Georgians as far as their origin.
Sure. Now, you grew up primarily in Cartersville. You
Yes.
went
Yeah.
through the Cartersville schools.
I
and
did.
So
I
forth?
went except for one part of 1 year when my dad had a job where they were paving the road between Jacksonville and Brunswick, and he was in charge of that thing. So we moved to Brunswick for 1 year. Other than that, I spent all my time in Cartersville.
Now, my brother had a question he wanted me to ask of you, Scott, my brother Scott. And
Right.
did you go to Miss Mary Lou's kindergarten?
Absolutely did.
You did. So you're a
Absolutely
graduate
did.
like the rest of us.
I did. I went to Miss Mary Lou's kindergarten. In fact, I think I can name all of my.
Where was Miss Mary Lou's at that time? Do you remember?
I can't remember where it was, but I can remember going there.
So,
And,
well, which schools did you go? Where was the primary school that you went to?
the primary school was on, well, at that time it was Market Street, and then was later changed to Cherokee Avenue.
Hmm.
So I went. I pretty much went there all the way through school. I went to the primary school,
How
and
many
then moved over to the 3-story building for high school.
So all your first through 8th grades?
First through 8th were in the primary building. there.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now, the old high school, the old Sam Jones Female College that became the high school,
Right.
which when I was going to school was a junior high school building. So you went through, did you go through 12 grades or 11 grades?
I
at
went
that
through. I was the first class to go through 12 grades.
time? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sorry you asked. Right. Yeah, that was kind of a blow because most of my best friends were in that class ahead of me, so they ended up 2 years ahead of me going to college.
Wow.
And
I know that was a shock.
yeah, but it was. I think I can pretty much name all of my teachers. My first grade teacher was. Let me see. She was Miss. At that time, she later married. I'll come back to her. But Miss Dinks Irick was my second grade teacher, and Miss Pearl Goodwin was my third grade teacher. My fourth grade teacher was Rachel Pettit, who was not from Cartersville, but taught there for a couple of years. And then my fifth grade teacher was was Mrs. Mahan. My 6th grade teacher, I don't remember. Miss Kennedy was my 7th grade teacher. And then 8th grade, we had several teachers, teachers for each class.
Right. Did you ever have Miss James?
No, I never did. I had, in high school though, I had, I'm having some trouble here now with some names.
Well, you did better than I could done. I can't remember all my teachers.
Really?
No, no way. While you're in high school, let me ask you some questions here. We'll come back some more on your early childhood life, but you played, I know you played some sports in high school. I know you played football. Did you play any other sport?
I did. We didn't have a baseball team at that time. I played on the American Legion baseball team.
Okay.
But we didn't have any other sports besides basketball and football at that time that we participated in.
Now, did you play basketball at the old Cherokee Avenue gym?
Well, I didn't really play varsity basketball.
Okay.
I played pickup basketball.
I got you.
I wasn't very coordinated.
Now, you did play football.
I did play high school football for 3 years, and we had my senior year. We had probably one of the best teams that Cartersville's ever had, even to today. We did lose one game, but we had 4 players off that team who went on scholarship to SEC schools. So
Do you remember who they were?
Yeah, Lamar Leachman, who was he went to the University of Tennessee. Pat Whitworth went to the University of Tennessee, and let's see, Martin Ray Parrish. He was a guard, and he went, and they all played at Tennessee. They, in fact, Leachman made all SEC while he was there, and I think that Martin Ray Parrish made 2nd string. And then, even though he wasn't in my class, he was in the following class. Bobby Dodd, he went to Vanderbilt and starred up there. So we had a good team, had some good players. You asked me the last time that I talked to you about the brawl.
Oh, yeah. Now, before we get to that, what position did you play?
I played center.
Okay, were you starting center or backup?
I was starting.
Starting center.
Right.
And now we'll go to the big question, right? What was it? Ellijay High School, now Gilmer County.
That's correct.
Game.
And we were beating them in the 4th quarter of a game, 51-0. And they had a big old boy who was really a good player. His name was Coondog Davis, and he was lined up in front of me. He was a tackle, and he lined up in front of me, and we were playing from the single wing, and the center had to look back through his legs to send the ball back. Now they don't. Now these guys have such big hands, they can do it with one hand. But he lined up right in front of me, and I think the snap count was like on 2, and on 1, he came up with it like this and hit me and knocked me back into the backfield about 10 yards. And boy, all hell broke loose. I mean, people started coming down out of the stands. It was the biggest fight you've ever seen among not just the players, the parents of the players, everybody. And a bunch of Cartersville finest citizens got arrested up there that night and spent the night in jail. But it was a wild night. And people still talk about that can remember it.
Well, I've heard all sorts of wild stories. Somebody said somebody had a knife under their shoulder pads up there, and then I've heard that a lot of the windows in buses were broken out.
Well, as we were pulling out of the lot, one of their players came up and tried to reach through the window, and Lamar Leachman he got hold of that window and pulled it down on that boy's arm, and you could hear it crack. I mean, he broke that boy's arm. It was wild. But, I mean, that's not what you want, but that's what we had.
Yeah, we all escorted out of town.
Yes. Yes. Luckily, a couple of the sheriff's department officers from Cartersville were at the game, and they escorted us out.
Very good. Now, also when you were playing, another thing Scott wanted me to ask about, it seems like you had the first face guard on a face mask at Cartersville High School.
I think I did.
Is that for your nose getting broken a couple of times?
My nose had been broken twice. And like I say, the center position in the single wing is not a fun position to play because you get beat up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd gotten my nose broken twice earlier in the year. And so they put a face guard on me.
Right, and that was unusual for that time.
Right.
Boy, that was another day. Go back. You were born in the house on on Howard Heights.
Right.
After that, I think you had moved into a couple other locations in town.
We moved to West Avenue, and in a real small house there on West Avenue, next door at that time to the Pettits, Luke and Margaret Pettit and their daughters, and then we had a rollicking group of mostly boys that lived in about a 3-block area of West Avenue. And we did some wild and crazy things like we all had BB guns and we had BB gun fights but that was good times. I still have friends from Pete Rogers lived across the street from me, and Bert Crane lived catty-cornered across the street from me. And the Archer boys, the Gatewood girls lived up on the corner above me. And Jimmy McElree. I guess that was with the Magnus. They had 3 boys, the Magnuses, and then the Hodges lived a block on past me, and that's probably about. Oh, Charles Marler lived next door to me, and there was a vacant lot and a great big ditch between my house and the Pettit's house. Mm-hmm. But we'd play in that ditch, and then later Luke filled that. He put pipe in that ditch and filled that all in, and then Clyde Medlock. Was that the man you were trying to think of the other day? You were talking about the farm extension guy.
Yeah, well, he is one. There've been 2 or 3 others during my time. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, Clyde Medlock built a house right next door between us and the Pettits. So I lived there until the 2nd grade, and that's when we went to Brunswick and stayed down there for, I think, about 6 months. And I went to school there in the 2nd grade down in Brunswick. And then we came back, and we lived for about, maybe nearly a year in an upstairs apartment in the house on the corner of Cherokee and Cassville Road.
Okay.
Where a lawyer lived I can't think of what his name was.
Jake Cullens?
Jake Cullens lived, yeah, later. but we lived in the upstairs of that house. And then we rented my parents rented a house on Jones Street, and it was a house between the Morrises and I'm having a freeze, but anyway, it's right up at the top of the hill. Before it's right one house before the black section at that time started and the white section ended, and I lived there all the way through high school, and it was it was not much of a house, but it was a good place to live. I enjoyed it. I never thought of it being as a matter of fact, your mother got married in that house.
That's what I understand.
Yes, she did.
And the house is still there today, and I think it's maybe 3 or 4 houses on the left as you head
Yes.
north on Jones Street.
It's the third house on the left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was the elegant.
Definitely the only log cabin in that particular area, other than the old Boy
Right.
Scout hut.
That's right. So that was pretty much taking me up to where I graduated from high school. I finished high school as I told you, the first class to go for 12 years. And
How many students do you have in that class? Graduating class?
not a lot. It was the smallest class that they had back into the early 20s, because we were born in 1932, and that was the middle of the Depression. And people weren't having babies. I mean, they couldn't afford to have babies. We always teased about it. We were probably all accidents, Yeah. Then
So what year was that you graduated? Do you remember?
I graduated in 55,
55.
and excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. No, I graduated in 51 from high school.
Okay.
51 from college. 55 from college. And then just to bring back to my high school senior year, I was president of my class, and there's a picture that appeared in the Bartow Herald and the Tribune, I think, that were the presidents of the 4 classes were shown turning the first dirt for the new high school.
Really?
Right. And that was, I don't remember who the other 3 kids were, but that was something that I remember. And so I never got to attend it, but I did get to turn a shovel of dirt for it.
Well, I did, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you did. You were a star of that school.
I won't go that far. Skill and I didn't often agree, but obviously you excelled at it.
If you want to go up further, I got a scholarship, a Naval ROTC scholarship. And I had my choice of going to Princeton or Georgia Tech or Tulane. And I chose Georgia Tech like a crazy guy. I should have gone to Princeton, but I probably couldn't. Probably wasn't smart enough to make it at Princeton. But I went 4 years on this scholarship, and it paid everything. I mean, it paid all of your expenses, your room, your board, and plus $50 a month spending money. And that was, $50 a month was pretty good back then.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was okay. I could fill my car up for $2, and now you can't buy half a gallon for $2.
No, gas used to be cheap.
Right. So I went on to Georgia Tech, and I guess I had a pretty good career at Tech, not necessarily academically, but I had a great time socially at Tech.
Would you like to share some of that?
No, I don't think I would. But it was a great 4 years. And then I got when I graduated from Tech, I went into the Navy on a 3-year deal. I had to stay in for 3 years active and 8 years inactive reserves. And that was probably some of the best times that I ever had, was my 3 years in the Navy. I spent the time in Japan for the first year. I was on a ship that was home ported in Japan. And we only left port twice, once to go to Hong Kong and once to go to the Philippines and back. And then I got transferred after a year and got a promotion to Lieutenant J.G. and was made supply officer on a destroyer. So I spent all 3 of my years on active duty in the Pacific, in and around San Diego, most of it, some in San Francisco. I got discharged. I got shot in the foot.
Yeah, tell us that story, because
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, I was supply officer, and the supply officer was also the dispersing officer. He paid the men off every 2 weeks. And we paid, most of the men wanted their money in cash, so I went to we were in San Diego, and I went to the bank with my clerk, my dispersing clerk. He went with me. We had to wear our pistols on 45s, and you were to put a clip in the gun, but not around in the chamber. So that was our rules. So we went, and I picked up, I think it was around $240,000 in cash, because we were going on an 8-week tour, and I had to have enough money to pay for that and pay off the guys. So when we got back to the ship from the bank, we had this satchel with all this money in it. Went aboard. I went into my office where I had a safe, and I opened the safe, and I started counting the money into the safe. Well, a gunner's mate who had been up on that, and he's the guy that's in charge of all the small arms on the ship, supposedly an expert. Anyway, he came in and he said, "While you got your guns on, you and your DK," said, "let me have them and check them, because I have to check them every 2 weeks." So we did. I gave him my gun, and I kept putting money in the safe and counting it, and all of a sudden, bam! The whole room exploded. He'd shot me in the foot, shot himself in the thigh, and me in the foot with the same bullet. So I was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, and that was about the extent of my naval career.
So that kind of got you out of the Navy.
Well, not exactly, because I was due to get out of the Navy anyway, and before we went on this next cruise, which we were due to leave the next week, and I'd already been told that they were going to give me some temporary shore duty to give me something to do for the next 2 weeks until I got my discharge. So anyway, that got blown up, and I spent the next 4 or 5 weeks in the hospital. And the doctors were, that's what I started to say a while ago, I heard the doctors, the surgeons talking, "Are we going to be able to save this foot?" And I made them promise me that when I woke up, I was still going to have a foot. And I did. So anyhow, I got, but I did have to stay in the Navy for another, I guess, 3 months while I was recuperating from that. and they made me a shore patrol officer. That was my temporary duty.
Do you remember the name of the ship you were on when that happened?
Yeah, it was the Richard B. Anderson, DD 786, I believe it was.
And that was a destroyer?
Yeah.
How about your first ship? You said you've been on two.
It was the USS Electron, which was a supply ship, converted from an LST, which is a World War II landing ship, into a supply ship. And they'd converted two of them. One was the Electron, the other was the Proton. And I was on the Electron. I was the assistant supply officer.
All right.
Well, then I got out of the Navy, and your sister, Carolyn, she flew out to California to drive back with me from when I got out, and we went in San Francisco. We went to San Francisco, and we went to all these places. And she kept always told the tale that she got asked for her age in these nightclubs we went to, and I didn't. And she was 8 years older than I am. So but anyway, we came on back and we went to Las Vegas. I think we spent maybe 3 nights in Las Vegas. And your mother had never been out there. She'd never been to California or Nevada or any place out west. So it was a real fun trip for her. And we drove all the way back then without stopping, except for gas, from Las Vegas to Cartersville. That's a long way.
That is a long way.
It's a long way.
In those days, no interstate highway system.
And no air conditioning in
No
the car.
conditioning.
And in midsummer. So that was a hard trip, but I mean it was fun. We had a good time. And it really gave me a chance to get to know Carolyn better, because with our 8-year age difference, we had never been very close, because she had her friends and I was just a pest. You know, I was the little kid that pestered she and her friends. And then by the time I got into high school, she was going off to college. So we were never close until later on, because anyway, we were just a generation apart, really. And so when I got back to Cartersville, I had a decision to make. I had a couple of job offers that I had gotten at Tech. Then my dad had started this pipe company, concrete pipe. And he told me that I could do either one. It wouldn't upset him either way. But I decided to go into business with him. And that's how I ended up in the concrete business. And I guess I stayed in that business from then until 1980. And so it was kind of a long career. It turned out fairly well. I had built from what he had when I got home, the one plant in Cartersville with some rather rudimentary machinery in it. But I'd built another plant in Kingston.
Now, the Cartersville plant was at the intersection of Peachtree Street and 293 or Tennessee Street.
What's the street that goes up the hill right there?
Peachtree Street.
That's right. Okay.
I think you're in Atlanta there for a minute.
But anyway, I built another plant in Kingston. And then 3 or 4 years later, I built a plant in Athens. In 1973, there were some extenuating circumstances I'm not going to go into, but I decided to leave Georgia Pipe and to build a new plant in Douglasville, which was going to manufacture, or did manufacture, catch basins and head walls, other miscellaneous construction type concrete.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bigger plant than we had ever had, and we did very well with that plant, and except for the recession that came on the next year, but we muddled through. Well, my dad had told me that he would like to consider retirement. And so the new company that I'd formed took over the operation of Georgia Pipe Company and Kingston Concrete Pipe Company. And we closed the Athens plant. And it went on like that. And of course, Daddy was paid. He was paid a sufficient amount. And it didn't really cause any, I don't think, permanent hard feelings the way it had all worked out. But because I love my daddy more than anybody in this world. And so then we, later after that, I'm getting toward the end of my careers, I sold my business, the one in Douglasville, and the one in Cartersville and Kingston. So anyway, I sold the businesses to a company out of Alabama, and who was in the same line of business all over the Southeast. Same people that Freddie Harris and Joe Franks sold their business to. The same year, as a matter of fact. And I had to go to work for them under terms of the sale for a 2-year period, and at the end of the 2 years, I left them, and kind of mutual agreement, I guess you'd say.
Before you go on that, let's come back to Cartersville real
All
quick
right.
before you go in
Okay.
behind the concrete business. You did start a family. You did live, I believe,
I did.
on Boatner Avenue. Is that correct?
No, it was on Grandview
Grandview.
in the Davis subdivision.
All right, so
And I married Joan Fairshow, who was, I can't get over these Joans. I've got a Joan here now too. But and we had 3 children. Kathy was the girl, and then we had Jim, who was Leon James the third, and Patrick Lawrence. And they went through their early years in school. Well, except for Patrick, I think he only went 1 year in Cartersville, but Kathy and Jim went, I guess, to 5th and 6th grades in Cartersville. And we had a nice time living in Cartersville. Joan was an artist, and she was a very, very good artist. She painted portraits.
now, Joan, you and Joan were married when, around 1960?
59.
59. I believe I was 6, 7 years old at the time.
Yeah, we were married in 59. Kathy was born in 60, and Jim was born in 61.
All right, and Joan's parents were who?
They were the Fairshows, Erchaud. They were from New Orleans, and they moved to Atlanta. He was the president of a company called Dixon and Tomato, which were the largest at that time tomato repackers in the country. And they packaged them for shipment out all over the country, and they would be the distributors. Very, very good job. It's a very big company. So Joan had been raised in New Orleans, and coming to Cartersville was pretty much of a joke for her because she'd been raised in the big city for all of her life.
Right.
And she couldn't really understand why there were two movie theaters in town, and one of them didn't stay open but part-time, the Legion. And then they had, and of course they had at one time there they had a drive-in theater, but it didn't make it either. So I think the two biggest things that I can think of that affected Cartersville and its growth, and it's from where it was when I was growing up, where it was just a teeny town,
It was.
to where it is today. The two major things that happened, one was the interstate highway system getting started and built with their route by Cartersville. And the other was probably the building of the Altoona Dam.
I would agree with that.
Yep. And those were two major things that helped Cartersville just, well, it did the same for some other cities. It did the same for Canton, Cumming. And of course, Atlanta's exponential growth.
What were some of the other activities in Cartersville while you were there? You were in the Cartersville Rotary Club.
I was.
Over the years.
There weren't a lot of activities that I was really involved in except Rotary. I belonged to the Cartersville Country Club. Never was a very good golfer, but I tried.
Now, you used to caddy some, didn't you? At
Yeah.
The old course down
I
where
did.
Tinsley Park was established?
Yeah, that's when I was a pre-teener into my teenage years, I guess, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Now, I know your father was a Methodist, your mother was a Baptist, but it seemed like I was seeing you at the Episcopal Church a
Well,
lot, so.
It was always kind of strange to me, but my dad was a Methodist. He went to church every Sunday, went to Sunday school, and my mother would go to church 1 block away at the First Baptist Church. They were both fairly devout, and I don't know why they couldn't get together on a church. But let's see.
Now, you were active. Now, when did you decided on the Episcopal Church, did you not?
Yeah, that's after I married Joan,
Okay.
and she'd been raised Roman Catholic, and of course I'd been raised in the Baptist church. And Carolyn was an Episcopalian. She had joined your father in the Episcopal church, and so Joan and I decided that we would compromise and join the Episcopal church.
It's amazing how the Episcopal Church becomes the compromise.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, I guess it's the best compromise for someone who's been raised in the Roman Catholic Church, and their staid services, and somebody who's in the Baptist and much more open services. So I don't know. It worked out.
Now, you served as a lay reader some in the church, did you
Yes,
not?
I did. Well, in this church, and then in a church over near Vinings too. So
Who were your good friends in Cartersville at the time?
Charles Ross, Bill Shadden, Pete Rogers, although he moved away for a number of years. He lived in Houston, Texas, for a number of years. Jim Dodrell. Boy, that's tough when you. Well, Pat Whitworth, who didn't actually come back to Cartersville after he went to the University of Tennessee playing football.
Mm-hmm.
But he was still always one of my best friends, and he and I kept in touch up until 3 or 4 years before he passed away. And Martin Ray Parrish, he and I communicated for a long time, and then I think he passed away. He did pass away. And I don't know really exactly.
Louis Steinsmeyer came along. Y'all seem to be good friends. For
And
years.
he's been one of my very closest friends since he came to town. Great guy. And Sally was one of Joan's closest friends too.
Uh-huh.
Sally Tonsmeyer.
Now, you and Daddy got into my father Sherman, I believe, and your daddy into a car wash business
In
one time.
Carrollton, Georgia. That's right. And we finally we lost a little money on that deal. Not a great deal, but we lost some. My dad and I bought a farm out in Taylorsville.
I enjoyed that farm.
Yeah, it was a big farm, 680 acres, and we enjoyed that. That was a good investment too. We made some money.
Your daddy got to have his garden.
He did strawberries and
Oh yeah.
the whole works.
Yeah.
And well, then we moved. I got into the lighting business, and we moved from Vinings, where we had moved back in '73, to East Cobb, or Roswell. I guess it's a Roswell address, but an East Cobb post office address. Then I lived there, went into the lighting business, and was fairly, I guess, successful in the lighting business for a number of years. And then Joan first got breast cancer, but that's not what she died of. She lived a couple of years after that, and she died of pneumonia and emphysema. And that was back in '03. And then I met Joan, and we've been together practically ever since.
So you found another Joan.
Yeah, and she's the,
And this Joan's last name when you met her.
was Burks.
Okay.
When I met her, her original last name was Travers, right? Mm-hmm. And
What year did y'all meet? Do you remember? Or am I putting you on the spot?
No, I think we met in '05,
Okay.
'04, or yeah, '05, I think.
Where'd y'all meet?
And we met on the internet.
On the internet. All right.
Yes, sir. That's the best thing I've ever done on the internet. She has been a wonderful partner to me. And,
Now, you got married last year.
yes, year before last now, wasn't it?
Year before last?
Uh-huh.
Time flies.
Yeah.
Lost all track of time.
And that's pretty much skims over my life. I don't know. I'm sure you might have some other questions.
Of course. How about the kids? I mean, if we moved them to another school, where did, let's say we'll start with Kathy. Where did she graduate from high school?
They all three graduated from Campbell of Smyrna.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jim went on to University of Georgia for 2 years. Kathy went to Georgia Southern for 2 years. And Patrick has never gone to college, but they all graduated from Campbell High School. Kathy married a great, fine young man that she met at Georgia Southern named Bud Workman. Bud has been ultra successful in his businesses and has made, he's made a success of his business life. And Jim, the reason I said he was only spent 2 years at Georgia is he started a business while he was there, and he's never quit. He's had about 6, 7 businesses, all of them been successful, and he's just done very, very well. And he's just recently bought a house out in Utah, and he said it's just going to be for now just a vacation house, but because he loves to ski.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. He's now talking about maybe them moving out there later on. So I would hate for them to move, but
Now, his wife, unless I missed it, is who?
all right.
Jim's?
His wife is Stacy. She was Stacy Johnson. And no, her sister's name Johnson. I've forgotten what's Stacy's father's name?
I don't remember.
Well, I can't recall. I'll probably think of it in a minute. But he was a vice president of Yellow Freight Line
Mm-hmm.
until he retired. He retired, and they live now up in Big Canoe.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you got some grandchildren.
I have bukus.
Because
I've got 6 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren. So that's a lot. But they're all just precious. And I love them very, very much. If you want to go back to any earlier, and I don't know what you would like to talk about.
well, it's anything that you would like to talk about. I'm always interested in stories about my mother, if you can remember any of those, because I know she could always tell good stories on you.
Yeah, I
Get
know.
carried
I
away
know.
with
She
them.
always seemed to have a lot of stories on me, and I never did. I know you asked me to do this before, and so has Scott. And I didn't know your mother, honestly, until I was grown.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had her circle of friends, and I had a different circle of friends. But we were always cordial, and we loved each other. But I didn't ever get in on the parts that would be interesting to you. I think that one of the real sad days for me was when we went to her birthday party. Has that now been, 4 years?
She died 5 years ago, I believe.
5?
Now. Hmm.
We went to her birthday party, and she seemed so jovial and had such a good time. And then the next morning, I don't know whether you or Scott called me to
Well,
tell me.
it was actually not the next morning, the following morning.
Well, the
because
following
she had a wonderful day the following day when I saw her. I think I left her house around 1:30. She was on top of the world, still talking about her party the night before.
Right.
And, you know, it had a lot of calls from her birthday. And it was, I think when I was leaving, Scott's wife, Deborah, and Sarah, I believe, middle child, came to visit. And it was after they left, we felt like she took a fall and fell and didn't find her till the next morning. And
Right.
she always told me if I didn't keep up with her every day, she was going to be lying dead in the house and unknown. And she used to get on me all the time about that.
Just
And
jolly news.
I felt real bad when Scott called me, yes, and,
Yeah.
and told me, said he found her and that she had gone. But I can say she went with a smile on her face because she had had a great time, and it was having all her close friends and you, her brother.
That's good.
So
That's good. I'm happy that if I go, or when I go, not if, but when I go, I'd like to go kind of just like that. Have a big party.
exactly,
And then,
and go quick if you're going to go.
that's right.
I agree with you. Well, what else in your life? Anything else you would like to add, or for
Well,
the next generation to come along?
Well, I guess the thing that since Joan and Joan II and I have been together and been married, one of the big joys of our life has been cruising.
Mhm.
And I think we've probably been on, I don't know, maybe 10 ocean voyages, something like that, plus a couple of river voyages in Europe. And those were just such great times and happy times. And then when I got sick this last year, we had planned on a couple more cruises, and we had to cancel them. But now that I'm getting better, we're going back on a cruise to Hawaii early next year.
Wonderful.
So
I'm glad to hear it.
we found out that they have dialysis. It's called dialysis at sea, and they have these certain ships that have dialysis units on them.
Hmm.
Because dialysis is something you can't just not do.
Right.
And so,
Well, that sounds like a great plan, and
well, then Joan let me know here last week. She said, "Well, we might could even do one before then. We might could go up to New England on a 6-day cruise or 7-day cruise." So,
that'd be fun. Also, I'd like to do that myself.
well, if we do that, we'll take you with us.
Let's do it.
All right.
Would like to add in. You kind of named. Did we name you Unc, Scott and I? 'Cause
Yeah.
that's what we
Yeah.
always called you.
Yeah, I was the first Unc in the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood.
That's right.
Well, you were always good to me, and I appreciate that.
Well,
We had a good time.
You've been good to everybody, Guy. To your mother, to your aunts. You have. You've been a wonderful, wonderful relative to have.
Well, I try.
Well, you have done a good job of it.
Well, thank you.
Don't you think? There you go.
Well, this story's about you, and it seems like you've had a wonderful life.
I think kind of the thing that I kind of skipped over a little bit, maybe too quickly, was my career at Georgia Tech. Because I had a really great career there. I mean, I don't know how it happened exactly, but I was elected class president 3 of the 4 years that I was there. And I was class secretary the first year, and then class president the next 3 years. And I was elected to ANAC, which is the It's a National Honor Society, and I was elected to ODK, which is another National Honor Society. I was president of ANAC and vice president of ODK. So that was really among some of the real honors that I got while I was at Tech.
Well, that sounds like a great honor. It's a great honor that your classmates elected you to be president so
Yeah,
often.
I thought so too. I thought that was worth mentioning. But I love the greatest thing that's happened to me ever, probably, because of, well, several things that have transpired in the last 2 years, is my meeting Joan, this Joan, second Joan, because I would never have made it. I think back in 7 or 8 months ago, when you came to the hospital to see me, I don't think people thought I was going to live very long.
No, you didn't look good.
And she's nursed me through it, and I'm just couldn't be happier in my marital situation.
And Patrick's been a lifesaver also.
Oh yes, he has. He's been here every day except Sundays from the time almost that I went into the hospital, hadn't he? Which has been a year.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Julie, I mean, I don't mean to get off the subject, but I wasn't able to come to your mother's services, and I wanted to belay my condolences to you, and so I haven't had a chance to talk to you.
And that's my daughter, Julie Parmenter.
That'll make me cry.
Well, anything else? And I'll ask you also the same question I asked my mother when I interviewed her. Is there anything you'd like to say to future generations of your family that will come along way after we're all gone?
Well, I think if I would have any advice to give them, is be honest to yourself, be truthful to yourself, and to live your life like my father did, who was, and your father, as a matter of fact, who were perfect gentlemen all their lives. I never heard either of them say a bad word about anybody. And I don't think that you can live your life that way. I mean, the other way. Saying bad things about people and sniping behind their backs. And I think if you live your life that way, you'll be successful.
I would agree with you. And both those gentlemen were well respected in their community.
Absolutely.
It's always good to
I
be
did
with
too.
you, and I appreciate getting this all on video, so future generations will have an opportunity to see it and know who their grandfather was, their great-grandfather, and so on. So
Yep.
anyway, thank you a lot.
Well, you're quite welcome.